When the sacred day slips away and the world returns to its noise, something inside feels quietly unfinished. Ashura ends. The fast is over. The reflection slows. And for many, life goes back to its routine pace. But let me ask you something deep. What did that day plant in your heart? Was it just a fleeting emotional high? Or did it carve something permanent in your soul? The real question is not how you spent Ashura, but how Ashura changed the way you'll live after it. If the day reminded you of the strength of truth, the pain of sacrifice, and the reward of patience, then that memory should never expire with the sunset. The death of Hussein was not just a historical tragedy, it was a wake-up call, etched into time, to remind us that standing for what is right will always cost something, but walking away from it will cost everything. The people who turned away from the grandson of the Prophet didn't do so because they hated him. They did it because they feared discomfort more than they fear God. That fear still lives today in hearts that know what is right, but delay, deny, or stay silent. But after Ashura, the spiritually awake person asks, what am I choosing in my own Karbala? Am I following truth even when it's lonely? Or am I siding with ease because it's more comfortable? The Quran calls out with power. Do people think they will be left alone after saying, we believe, without being tested? These tests don't end when the day ends. They begin. They grow. They deepen. This is why the true value of Ashura is not just in what you did on that one day. It's in what you do when no one is looking. After the tears dry, after the fast is broken, after the videos stop circulating, after the reminders go quiet. This is when your sincerity is tested. Are you still seeking to purify your heart? Are you still standing for justice in your own choices, in your home, in your workplace, in your character? The Prophet taught us to fast on Ashura, not just to follow tradition, but to remind us that spiritual growth requires personal effort. Fasting humbles you. It sharpens your focus. But once it ends, your responsibility begins. The fast was not the goal. It was a training ground. Real taqwa, real God consciousness, starts when no one is watching. It's when you choose truth, even when it comes with no applause. It's when you pray in the dark. It's when you forgive in silence. It's when you control your tongue in a heated moment because you know your Lord is watching. Ashura reminds us that truth is never popular, but it is always right. Hussein stood for that truth, and he was left nearly alone. But he remained firm because he knew this life is temporary, but the record of your choices is eternal. So if you're wondering what to do after Ashura, begin here. Stay spiritually alive. Don't slip back into old patterns. Don't let your heart harden again. Keep seeking knowledge. Keep cleansing your intention. Keep repairing your connection with the Quran. Keep making silent prayers in the late hours. Keep rejecting anything that pulls you away from your purpose. The Quran says, and whoever honors the symbols of God, indeed, it is from the piety of hearts. Ashura was one of those symbols. How you live after it is what honors it. When you take a sincere step toward Allah, even on a single day like Ashura, that step is not forgotten. It's not erased when the day passes. It becomes a witness. The prayers you offered, the hunger you bore, the effort you made to remember Him, none of that disappears into the past. It lives on, not just in the record of your deeds, but in what it's supposed to lead to next. If you fasted on Ashura and felt that closeness, even for a moment, that was your soul reminding you of its home. And once a heart tastes that kind of peace, it shouldn't be left starving again. The days after Ashura are not meant to return to spiritual laziness. They're meant to be a continuation. This is how sincerity is measured. When the emotional wave has passed, and yet you're still standing, still seeking, still walking toward the one you claim to love. A heart that only worships in moments of intensity is not stable, but a heart that builds slow, steady habits, even if small, becomes deeply rooted. The Prophet taught us that the most beloved deeds to Allah are the consistent ones, even if they're few. Not the ones that burst with intensity and vanish the next day. That's what makes continuation so powerful. It shows that you're serious. You don't have to become someone else overnight. But if you fasted on Ashura, maybe now, try fasting a day every week. If you spent more time in prayer on that day, try adding just 2 raka'at before bed. If you stayed away from sins that day out of respect for its sanctity, ask yourself what would happen if you carried that same respect into your regular days. These small choices are how the soul grows. Step by step, quietly, honestly. Sometimes we think the big days are the only days worth striving for. But Allah is not just the Lord of Ashura. He's the Lord of the ordinary, unnoticed mornings too. He's watching on the regular Wednesday when you quietly choose to avoid gossip, when you lower your gaze, when you control your anger, when you do something good that no one will ever applaud. Those are the real signs of growth. That's the kind of worship that shapes who you are when no one else is watching. You don't need a sacred date to keep being spiritually awake. What you need is sincerity. Because once Allah sees that you're trying, He helps you in ways you never imagine. And the one who keeps walking, even with shaky steps, is already on the path of the guided. There's something deeply sacred about the moments when you raise your hands and no one else knows. When the world around you is asleep or busy or loud, but inside you, there's a quiet desperation, a whisper that only Allah hears. That's where real connection begins. It doesn't need a microphone, a crowd, or a perfect setting. It just needs a heart that's turned upward. A soul that's finally tired of pretending it's okay on its own. Dua is not just a request. It's a surrender. It's not a speech. It's a confession. It's the moment you drop all the masks and say, I can't do this without you. And when that plea comes from a place of sincerity, it reaches higher than the loudest voice. There is no status required to be heard. No rank, no title. Even if you feel unworthy, even if your past is heavy, He still listens because His mercy doesn't wait for perfection. It waits for truth. You might have prayed during Ashura with more intensity, with more feeling. And now that the day has passed, the temptation is to slow down, to lose that depth. But this is the moment where your dua becomes even more meaningful. When there's no external pressure, no crowd, just you and your Lord. That's when it counts most. The Prophet taught us that Allah descends in the last third of the night, calling out, who is asking me that I may give him? That invitation is open every night, not just on special occasions. Sometimes the most powerful dua are the ones we whisper with tears we don't show anyone. The ones we repeat without the perfect words. Just the raw, broken, trembling ones. Help me, forgive me, guide me. These words carry weight because they come from real places, and Allah knows those places. Even when you can't explain them, even when your chest feels heavy and you don't know what to ask for, He knows. He understands what you can't say. Never underestimate what a quiet, sincere dua can shift in your life. It might not change things overnight, but it begins to shift something inside you. It brings light to places you thought were dark forever. And even if you don't see the answer immediately, the act of turning to Him was already a victory, already a mercy. Some of the most beautiful moments in your life won't be the ones others remember. They'll be the ones where you sat alone, hands raised, eyes closed, and felt like you were finally heard. There's a reason why the story of Hussein still shakes hearts centuries later. It's not just about a battle. It's not just history. It's a mirror showing us what it means to love truth more than comfort, to stand alone if that's what it takes, to lose everything in this world and still win with Allah. If we claim to love Him, then that love has to show up in how we live, in what we defend, in what we let slide, and in the kind of silence we keep when truth is being trampled. It's a kind of silence we keep when truth is being trampled. Studying his legacy isn't about memorizing names or dates. It's about asking yourself hard questions. Would I have stood with him or stood aside? Would I have followed my conscience or followed the crowd? Because Karbala wasn't a one-time event. The world still divides between people of principle and people of convenience. And you can't honor Hussein by just crying over what happened. You honor him by standing for what he stood for, even if it costs, even if it isolates, even if no one understands. This is where real faith is tested. It's easy to speak about justice, but Hussein didn't speak it, he lived it. He carried it into the desert knowing what it would cost. And not once did he turn back. That's not just bravery, that's certainty in Allah. That's a heart that knew this life was temporary and that the truth is worth more than survival. Every person who stood beside him was written into the pages of honor, not because they had strength, but because they had loyalty. Loyalty to a cause, loyalty to faith, loyalty to what was right. You can't change the past, but you can make sure you're not repeating it by staying silent in your own life. You can take from Hussein the courage to speak up when your family, your workplace, your community needs it. You can learn from him that loyalty to people should never be stronger than loyalty to principle. You can learn that the cost of standing alone is nothing compared to the regret of standing on the wrong side. And when you study him not just with your eyes, but with your heart, something in you shifts. You begin to realize that this world is not the end, that power is not the goal, that popularity means nothing when weighed against purpose, that dying with honor is better than living in falsehood. That's when you know you're beginning to understand what Hussein really left behind. You don't have to do something huge to be counted among those close to Allah. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to fix everything in one night. Sometimes the most powerful change begins with the smallest step that no one sees. One verse of the Quran in the morning, even if your heart is heavy. One quiet prayer when your body is tired. One decision to hold your tongue when you feel like lashing out. These are the moments that shape who you really are. When you do something privately for the sake of Allah, it holds a different kind of purity. It's untouched by praise. It's not meant for approval. It's just between you and the one who created you. And those are the actions that carry the most weight. They're not flashy. They're not impressive in the eyes of the world. But they're real. They come from a place deep within. And that's where sincerity grows. The Prophet taught that the person who remembers Allah silently, away from the eyes of people, will be among those shaded on the day when there's no shade but His. Not because the action was loud, but because it was sincere. You could do a small deed, so small it feels like it barely matters. And yet, if it's done with a clean heart, with love, with humility, it could be the reason Allah chooses to forgive you. We often overlook these opportunities, thinking greatness has to be public. But think about the way the companions lived. Their most beautiful acts weren't always known. They were hidden between them and their Lord. They wept in the night. They gave quietly. They didn't need to be seen. They just needed to be close to the one who sees everything. You don't need a massive plan. Start by setting something simple that no one else knows about. A prayer before dawn, a few coins given in secret, a verse repeated every day, and tell no one. Let it be your secret offering to the one who knows how much you're trying. Over time, you'll feel how much that private worship grounds you. It becomes your shelter when the world gets loud, your reminder when you drift, your quiet proof that even in your lowest moments, you never fully gave up. And on the day when every soul is called forward, those silent acts will speak on your behalf. When others wonder where your strength came from, only you and your Lord will know where it was built. There's a kind of honesty that only comes when you sit alone and ask yourself what you've been carrying. Not just the obvious things like your schedule or your plans, but the deeper choices. The quiet patterns you've let settle in. The actions that feel small on the outside, but are slowly shaping your heart, your character, your hereafter. These aren't things anyone else can judge. They're between you and Allah. And sometimes the most important act of worship is simply pausing long enough to ask, what am I really doing with my life? It's easy to talk about change. It's harder to look at yourself with sincerity and start the audit. But every believer who is serious about growth has to reach that moment, not in fear of people, in fear of standing in front of the one who knows it all already. That kind of accountability is not about guilt, it's about clarity. You're not punishing yourself when you ask hard questions. You're trying to wake up before it's too late. Is what I watch helping or hurting my heart? Are the conversations I keep pulling me closer to my values or dulling them? What kind of words do I speak when I'm angry, when I'm tired, when I think no one will remember them? How often do I sit with the Quran, not for show, not for a schedule, but just to soften what's inside me? These aren't dramatic questions. They're the ones that build a life you can be proud of on the day you meet Him. We ask Allah for peace, but sometimes we refuse to leave the habits that poison our peace. We beg Him for guidance, but we keep walking into the same patterns. Real repentance isn't just about stopping a sin. It's about hating the door that led you there, about shutting it down completely, even if it means being uncomfortable, even if it means being misunderstood, even if it means starting over. If there's a part of your lifestyle that you know is pulling you away from Him, trust that letting it go will never leave you empty. You may feel the ache at first, the loss of comfort or distraction or whatever it gave you. But Allah replaces what you give up for His sake with something better, something cleaner, something you can carry into your grave without fear. Sometimes all it takes to return to who you were meant to be is one honest night, one moment where you look at what you've become and whisper, I want to come back. Some hearts stay soft, while others grow numb. And most of the time it has nothing to do with strength or weakness. It has to do with what you've been letting close, what you've been listening to, what kind of people you've allowed into your circle, what kind of voices you've made room for in your head. The heart was never meant to stay pure without protection. It was created to feel deeply, but it was also created to be shaped by what surrounds it. If you spend your days surrounded by people who take your soul lightly, who laugh at sins, who mock sincerity, who make you feel embarrassed to speak about faith, you will slowly find yourself hardening, not out of choice, but out of constant exposure. That's how people drift, not in one big step, but in a slow erosion of values, one conversation at a time, one compromise at a time, one silence at a time. The Prophet warned us clearly, a person is upon the religion of their close friend, which means the people you sit with, talk to, and lean on. They're not just influencing your mood, they're shaping your akhirah. You become like them, whether you intend to or not. If they chase dunya endlessly, you'll find yourself running too. If they belittle wrong, you'll start laughing with them. If they avoid truth, you'll soon stay quiet too. But the opposite is just as powerful. When you're around those who remind you of Allah, even without speaking, whose presence carries sincerity, whose hearts lean toward goodness, you begin to soften. You start remembering your purpose, not because they lecture you, but because their character teaches without words. These are the people you hold close. The ones who make you want to pray better. The ones who make you think twice before speaking. The ones who hold you up without even knowing they're doing it. Surrounding yourself with the right environment doesn't mean cutting people off harshly. It means protecting the health of your soul. It means knowing what you need to stay awake. You're not being arrogant when you seek cleaner spaces. You're being responsible. You're taking accountability for your own journey. And when your heart starts to feel heavy again, it's usually not because you've changed. It's because you've stayed too long in places that don't feed it. You weren't created to walk this path alone, but you also weren't created to walk with anyone who pulls you away from it. Find those who remind you of the garden, and you'll notice your footsteps slowly leaning back in that direction. Ashura has passed, but its purpose hasn't. Let it echo through your daily life, not just as a memory of sacrifice, but as a reason to walk the path of truth, with strength, sincerity, and humility.